Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Ovo Guerrero. I am the CEO of DataSync, founder of DataSync. Um, DataSync is a company that we built predominantly to help companies, individuals, startups build data projects or foundations much faster than anything else we want to see on the market. My background, I've been a chief data officer at several organizations over 20 years, head of data, and I've dealt with all sorts of complex data projects across the UK. I formerly see chief data officer of Get. I predominantly work in financial services, but I have worked in the startup environment as well as in major organizations. So what we built here within DataSync has been built for various reasons. I mean, there are many people who, when they're joining session, gave me an idea of what it is they're looking for. This is a tool or sets of tools that has been built thinking about how people run um, startups, how they build SaaS products, how they think about their data foundation, how they think about AI enablement. There's a whole raft of reasons we've done this, and there are many very facets of DataSync that we're going to do a live demo of to show you how you get the best value out of this. So what I'm going to do is we're going to just do very few slides, just kind of frame this well. So we know that there are problem statements across the board, depending on what you're looking for. I mean, some people are just worried about having data silos when they're looking at their various systems that they end up using as they build something. Other people are looking at when they have their SaaS product, how do I onboard a client onto that SaaS product? Some people are actually running consultancy services and they're thinking, oh, how do I, work with my client to be able to do data projects, mapping, requirements building, modeling from scratch in a very quick way. Other people are just stuck on the fact that, look, I've got data everywhere and I can't keep up with what I built. Now, typically, what happens in the startup is you want to move quickly. So you build something, and then 6 months later, nobody remembers how that thing works, and you may have to rebuild it from scratch. And worse still, I had this problem when I first started my company. People come, they go, what do they do? Where does that knowledge reside? Undocumented work is not an asset. It's just debt that you have to repair at a later date. So we want to make that something that you can actually build from scratch. You're not trying to reverse engineer, and you actually can functionally be better from the start, and it grows with you. To give context, so when I was chief data officer of Get, Get was a 10-year-old organization, and I had 80 people in my data organization. We had so many data analysts because fundamentally the data analysts had siloed knowledge. They were the only ones who understood that domain. Every domain needed a data analyst. There's a lot of schema drifting as the products were changed. We had an engineering team that had to keep up with when the product team did work. And we couldn't reduce the number of people because all the knowledge resided in people's heads. So you couldn't just turn around and go, oh yeah, I can run this organization with less people. It was really undocumented complexity. And this really happens as companies scale. So your problem may start small now, but it only gets bigger the larger you get. So the whole aim of DataSync is to how do you build that foundation right and scale with you so that you get the value and you don't actually end up with a big cost at the very end. And how do you move quickly while doing this? So this is all about what if your foundational documentation was there, and what if the system you had actually defended itself against data drifts, or rather against schema drifts? And what if that entire thing was self-healing, self-documenting, and did it all in place? That is what we're about to show you. Now, before I move on from the slide, I just want to show you one final picture that you want to bear in mind as we go through the actual demo in place. Imagine, for instance, you're trying to build a SaaS platform. You would have to think about what's on your backlog, schedule the work, analyze the work, document it, hopefully do data governance, which rarely ever gets done, build it, test it, deploy it, monitor it, and then fix it in production. Most of the time, you find teams will tell you that 40 to 60% of the engineering team's capacity is spent actually fixing things that are broken. So the aim of DataSync is to how do I create this loop that self-heals itself and reduces your overall cost. And what we have is a tool that is pretty powerful. So the scenario we're dealing with here is we have got, I'm going to put it to one scenario where we have got an estate company. So this particular startup, for instance, is looking to effectively acquire various estate properties or estate agents, and they onboard them onto their platform, and they use that to streamline the way they operate. So the various things you have to think about is how do you fundamentally onboard data onto your platform where you have a SaaS product. So you're basically migrating information is what this scenario is in place. There's several tools that are available in DataSync. I'm going to start with the much simpler tool to deal with, which we call our extract to target tool. In this particular tool, and this is the problem case that the estate agent throws, and this can work for anything. You have, in fact, got multiple unstructured data sources that you are trying to pull into a very structured template, or you want to extract certain bits of information from it. Now, in this particular scenario, they are looking to extract the tenancy register template. They upload the template onto that. They can also save templates that they've used in the past. We then pull the data from that template, and for everything of that in that template, it is giving a long name, determines what entity it sits on, and you actually get a definition for that, which you can. So these are things that the agent does by default. It effectively defines information. Everything it does, it always gives it a definition. What is it? And it gives you a confidence score when it's not clear, so you can have chance to amend that if you do not agree with what the agent has said in its extraction. Once you've done that, you can save that as a template, as something you can reuse when you extract information. Now we then look at the source of where you pull information from. Now that source could be a URL of where you stored information within your, or it could be an actual PDF or whatever unstructured data source you want to pull in, an email. Now this is a URL that the information is stored in. We hit fetch and it pulls the information that it has, which is a PDF stored in that location. We then are able to go into extraction, which then scans through all the information held in there and pulls back the information that is aligned to what you were looking to pull from that information, which you can then preview and take a look at what that data looks like. You can see where it has lower confidence. You can edit that. You can basically go and look in your document to check if you're not happy with something because you think it's the wrong documentation. You can go in and edit and accept the change itself. Once you have this, if it's just a one-off thing you want to extract from unstructured information, you can do that and import or export the report as a CSV, or, which is the main thing we use this one, the main reason this was built, you can create an API endpoint. And what that simply means is you now have an endpoint that you can then go and create an API key. So you can have an application of your own, which you drop the PDF information into. That will then have an API as well that allows you to pull to see if what progress has been on that extraction process, and then finally get back the records you want in bulk. So you can create an API endpoint for every workflow where you have to extract some unstructured data. So this is particularly for unstructured data that we use this particular workflow. Well, that's just one of the workflows. So the next workflow is when you're actually doing a mapping. So if we went to a mapping, we typically have the starting point is if you want to map between two systems. Now, our application was first and foremost built for the investment industry. That was our first target audience. So we have the investment EDM built into the technology. But you may be an industry that isn't investment, and that's perfectly fine because the next steps should show you how you can map between multiple systems. So in this particular case, we're showing that same scenario where the client is looking to bring in data from multiple of the estate engine they've acquired. They've gotten the information they've uploaded. They have the templates that they want to pull data for. They also have some contextual data information they've loaded in there of stuff that the agency may have told them that they can load in to that particular, and they describe what it is you're doing as part of the process of uploading. Once again, takes us to the field identification. This is showing us for every field that we've named what that field believes it is and then also giving a definition for that. You can then review those things that are low confidence. You can make amendments to them. You can change what it is they say. So you can agree. So by default, you're agreeing, okay, this is what I believe I am uploading from both sides of the fence. Once I've got that, we then run the process of matching between the two systems. So what this does is it looks at the field names in one system and it matches them to the fields held in the other system. And it gives you confidence with a rationale for why it believes those are the same fields for your migration. If you've not got a perfect match, what you can then do is click that where it's unmatched, and then you can describe the rule that you want it to do to match that, because maybe it's not a one-to-one field mapping. You can describe the rule, hit and the agent will be able to generate that. I'll show that on the next iteration how this works, but for now, I just wanted to show you quite quickly, when I get through to here, by default, we create a document that you can modify for what you really require, change the templates, but you can amend things here if you don't agree with what it says, but the AI generates the documentation with all your mapping and all the logic that you've bedded into the entire process. And you can then download this both as, or rather as a PDF Word document, and also a JSON that can be fed into generating a pipeline of your own. So it literally gives you the code that is sitting behind the mapping itself. So if you're building your pipeline somewhere else, you can do that. It's not the main thing, but now that you've done that, we click this magical button called Build Our Own EDM. So your industry does not exist yet within our system. Once you've done at least one mapping, you click the Generate EDM within our system. Now, what is this doing? It is going through all the mapping it's seen, is determining what the data entity should be across that particular, your industry. It is finding out the primary keys, the foreign keys, the composite keys, the allowable values. It's effectively building for you what would normally take you working with a data architect months and months of work and effort to basically work out how you match data across your systems, how the relationships exist between each of the entities. And depending on how big your data set, it can take a bit of time to do, but it is fundamentally doing, for me, I use it to do a work in an hour that if I'd done manually would have taken me months of effort to pull together the entire data model. I know this, having done this multiple times in organizations. This entire thing is pretty much a thing I think is a bit of magic. Once that's done, if I go back to my map, create a new mapping, you can now see here, I have the ability to now use that EDM that I've created and not the one that we have. When we have that, we can now, when we're onboarding a system, we load those system values onto the things we want to onboard, the listings, the whatever it is from that particular new source we're trying to bed in. We add in any of our contextual information about anything, requirements, anything we know about this particular company we're bringing in. And finally, we then go through to run this and again go through the field identification. But now what's special is we map it to our internal model that we just generated. What this allows us to do, in a nutshell, is we can now map multiple systems together with great ease and allow us to then onboard data onto our platform very easily. And anytime you're doing this, you're building your data platforms, your data pipelines that are managed within DataSync itself. It allows you to easily derive what the rules are between when a matching is not available. So here we can see, again, you can create a bespoke rule, describe that rule, generate the rule, and it writes the Python code for you. And then you can then trial that rule and run it and then confirm it. That rule is how data is mapped between your various systems and it's held in one place. This isn't just about creating documentations fundamentally. This is really about taking what is there, going into DataSync here, and then be able to generate a pipeline that will then be able to open up in Pipeline Studio. We basically now have the pipeline of that company that we're looking to onboard onto our system. We have the data type profile of all the fields, all the tables we're looking to bring on board. We can look at the exceptions for each of these. It shows you the same sort of how it maps from the source system right the way through to your internal systems, as well as the rules that you wrote within there are transferred across and can be modified as well. You can then also see what happens to any allowable values are also translated, so it brings about to your system, your platform in the right way. And finally, you can then match. These matching rules are also generated by the data architect agent. It creates the rules that allow you to match between the various systems. Both It creates both exact rules of what are the rules in the waterfall approach or fallback approach, and it also allows you to create fuzzy rules when you have like names and you go, okay, if the first name of address matches in a fuzzy way, it should then allow me to be able to run this and see if it matches across multiple systems before you can then simulate a migration, an onboarding of the data onto your own platform. So what I've just shown you is something that you can easily do literally within a day. Many times when people build SaaS platforms, whether it's your own internal pipelines or it's the pipelines they're trying to onboard onto their SaaS platforms, that process can take literally weeks and weeks for them to onboard a new client onto the system. With this platform or with DataSync, that onboarding process is something you can literally do within a week at most in terms of depending on the level of complexity you're dealing with, but really mimic that in. Now, the beauty happens when you link these two systems together because all of the activities done by the data analyst agent can effectively now be done as part of what I call, autopilot. Once you've done the first mapping, you can then have this as your pipeline exists in production. Anytime you have schema drift, it can go through, analyze the schema, recheck your enterprise data model, and everything that you're doing is basically kept well defined, well documented, well orchestrated within DataSync. You then have the ability to ask it questions about your own data when you're not clear about how you did something or how a particular bit of transformation logic works. So you can chat with it as an open chat bot that allows you to ask questions around it. So you can see the whole raft of tools we've built within DataSync that allows you as a startup founder to streamline the way you build out your data platform, your data pipelines to lead to your own internal SaaS platform. It allows you to onboard people onto your SaaS platform fairly easily. And if you're not caring about the pipeline studio, just being able to map data onto DataSync, your own data, and then create your data model means that effectively you can understand your data ongoing in a well-structured way. So you build the foundations so that years later, around 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line, 5 years down the line, you're still able to understand what you're doing in a scalable way and not have people going, we don't understand what we did 2 years ago, how that was built, how that pipeline works, because it runs automatically without agents. I know I did a big whistle stop tour of that. Um, and I'm not sure if anyone has any questions or things they'd like me to go over again, but you can always stick your questions in the Q&A chat, and I will be happy to go into any particular thing in a great deal of detail. We'll send this out to people. The main thing is this. We are running as part of this startup program, or rather, we want to know if you're a startup founder, and depending on your level of maturity, we're offering a special price that's not on our website. So we have a form that we're going to send people as part of this, and the special prices we're offering are relative to your level of maturity. So let's say you are really in your first year. You are still experimenting. I know what it was like in my first year. I generally didn't want to pay for anything. So we are offering this entire platform for the lowest price we can possibly put it for, that barely just covers the cost of running it. So it's literally just the lowest price. Whereas as you grow, we will look to actually ensure that our pricing is well. So if you want to meet with us as a team, ask more questions, have a particular case that matches your industry, find out more about that, we're happy to give you a link that once you populate that information, you can book time with us, and we'll happily go through uh, how it matches your particular case and point of where you are in your journey.
What is the size referred to when talking about a startup?
It depends. I mean, we can use the various different scales here. Startups for us, it's all sizes throughout the entire journey. So I recognize that we kind of break it down as, I mean, there are two ways we talk about it, but I'm going to talk about in funding rounds, but it's not strictly a funding round thing. So you have what we'll call your pre-seed founder, where it's maybe a small team, one or two people, three people, in fact, and that's the entry level. We have seed round where you know fully well you've got product market fit, you're looking to scale a little bit to your growth stage. So then we have the Series A round and Series B round sort of idea where are you going from growth to scale? So we will assess you based on your actual needs, how many pipelines you need, what volume of data you're dealing with, how many users you need to access the system. So your scale as a startup, and we go all the way up to enterprise. So we do have an enterprise version as well. We'll assess you based on, revenue, how many people, and we will kind of plug you into where we think you sit in our hierarchy, and that will inform what pricing we give to you. But basically, we aim to be fair or absolutely better than if you were doing this yourself or if you were hiring someone to do it.
We've got another question. Does this product apply for enterprise level, like finance, house, microfinance bank? And also, is it location dependent?
The We can launch the platform in any location. With a enterprise, we can be completely bespoke in terms of where we end up hosting it. But it depending on your size, again, we have our SaaS platform that's multi-geography. So depending on what your data sovereignty needs are, we can meet in that. This product absolutely operates as an enterprise product. We do have clients who talk to us as enterprise clients.
One more question, cloud or on-prem?
We have the version that we have up on our website is cloud-based. On-prem is a possibility, but we should be an enterprise for us to do that. But if you're really a startup, but depends on your size again. Let me just put it in a plain sense. It would make no sense for us financially to be working with a pre-seed startup on an on-prem conversation because it's just not going to be palatable for us to support you on-prem if you're paying next to nothing. But if you are on our SaaS platform working with APIs, much different conversation. But if you need to be on-prem, we need to discuss how big you are so to make it make sense financially for both of us to do it that way. Because we're treating you almost like an enterprise client. So it's sort of how big are you for that to work? Well, we can launch it on-prem.
And is it pretty much a self-service type of process, or do you also do bespoke work based on requirements?
So bespoke work, most of the bespoke work you can do yourself, honestly, in the tool. I've just shown people earlier on how you can build your own data model. So the data model has been done by the AI agent. You can write your own transformation logic written through the AI, and that translates into the pipeline. So the transformation logic. So there's very little that we need to build bespoke for you. But if you have an improvement to the technology that we think is genuine in terms of, okay, that's something that's good. Because, for instance, extract to target was pretty much scoped for us by a client who says, great, this works for structured data, but what about my unstructured data? How could we do the same thing? So they scoped it out, we discussed it with them, and we built it into the product. So although it's not bespoke, it's for us is about the product direction. So if what you tell us as a bespoke requirement is really something we think is core to the product, we will see that as something to add to the product as part of our roadmap, not something we see as bespoke. So we're not an outsourcing provider. If you are someone who says, and this is not the point of the product, it is meant to be self-service, it is meant to be intuitive. We can offer you training and support in how you use it so you get familiar with the different workflows, but it really does not require you to be an expert in any of the things we're doing here for you to be able to do it. It does its own stuff. We can sit with you, work with you, make sure you understand exactly how it works, and we do a proper onboarding process there. What we're not, what we can do and we do is we do work with some consulting firms. I'm reluctant to say that because that goes counter to exactly what we're offering you, because we do not want you to be there going, oh, we got a consulting firm to build our thing for us. You should be able to do this yourself. We have some consulting firms we're partnered with. So if you do need to go down a route, that is an option that we can say we have one out in the Middle East who would point you in that direction. That's a partner who can help with you when you're doing the work here. We have we're currently discussing with consulting from someone based in Australia, US, that could support you on this. They use this as a completely different tool, and they will charge you consulting rates. So they're not special startup rates that we're offering here.
And one more question. I'd like to explore the solution. How do I book a session?
We'll send you a link as part of the when we're sending out the recording. We'll follow this up with a link. It will be. I think the link's already live on the website. Is that?
Mhm.
Yep.
Right.
So on the website, it'll be a link for you to fill in your details so we can prep for the session with you, and then we'll send you a link to book a session with myself. We'll go through, explore your use case, show you how the system meets that use case, and then bring you on board and give you the rates for your particular area or your particular level of maturity. Any more?
No more questions coming through.
If you have any more questions, I mean, a lot of you got an email from me, so you can always send me an email with your questions if you got that. I don't want to just have us sitting on the line waiting for the next set of questions to come through. So I'll call the session to an end. We'll send out the presentation pack that we sent you. We'll send out a video recording of the session when we edited that probably tomorrow. And we will also send you a link to where you can submit your information to be part of the startup scheme so we can assess your level. We'll then book a meeting with you to talk us through your needs and your requirements so we can then give you an idea of what the pricing is. The pricing on our website is not relevant to this conversation. It will be way cheaper for many levels than the pricing on our website. So we do not publish our startup pricing rates purely because we don't want people to, go, ooh, hack the system and whatever, but we will assess you. We'll try and independently verify everything you're saying about yourself. What's your website? We'll look at your product. We'll look at your level of maturity. Any public information we'll look at to go independently verify that you are saying what you're saying and not just someone trying to get a much cheaper price. Plus, it will not work because there are restrictions at every level. So if you're coming at the most junior level, there's certain functionalities that do not exist. And if you're coming at the most junior level, there are certain restrictions on how many times you can do something, how many times, how much data you can pass through. So you do not want to be at the wrong level to then have restrictions on what you can do. But we think the restrictions are fair. So let me give an example. If you were a pre-seed company, we would not expect to be onboarding more than 3 clients a month. Pre-seed company onboarding 3 clients a month is doing really well. So 1 client a month is great. Three is our cap on that. If you're someone trying to onboard 10 clients a month, you're just not going to be doing a pre-seed. And then there's a limitation on how many rows of data you can bring on board as well. There's lots of limitations that exist at the lower ranks that means it just isn't palatable for you if you're coming at the wrong level. So we want to make sure we've catered it to where you are. Okay.
Great.
Great. I'll leave it there. We'll send out the recording tomorrow. And any questions you have in the meantime, you can always email myself, and I will make sure myself or someone in the team gets back to you. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Cheers.